Good morning. Thanks for joining us at Startup Grind this morning. Today's event is brought to you by Spark Center, a regional innovation center in Durham Region. As the Eastern Ontario chapter of Startup Grind, Spark Center is thrilled to bring you these monthly events to inspire, motivate, and challenge you. My name is Gary Jarosz, and I'm the chair of the board for the Spark Center. Most of my professional career was with large ITC-based multinational corporations. And I got to a point in my career where what I was doing on a daily basis, it was very hard to see the impact it was having on the business. So I made a transition in my career and went into a couple of entrepreneurial startups, did some software startups, did a few technology-based startups, and then got into the clean tech industry. And I can tell you that there are a lot of benefits and there's a lot of challenges of being an entrepreneur. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, to provide some guidance and some jewels of information for those budding entrepreneurs and for those entrepreneurs who might be struggling today trying to figure out how to get over a problem. So before we kick off today's event, we want to take a moment to acknowledge that tomorrow is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. September 30th offers an opportunity to honor and remember the thousands of children who never returned home and the survivors of the residential school system. It's important to call out and learn from past transgressions so that we can strive to be and do better as individuals and as a country. Our hope now is for healing and reconciliation. So may this be top of mind, not only tomorrow, but always. So thank you for that. Now, before we begin, we'd like to thank Spark Center's elite partners, Breskin and Parr LLP, Finance Without Borders, RDP Associates, Leighton, and Suresh Law. The interview portion of today's event will begin shortly, but don't forget to stay tuned after the interview for networking. If you haven't tried the networking on the Hopin platform before, it's fun, it's easy, and it's a great way to meet some new faces and get some good contacts. Now, if you had a chance to read the recently released fall 2022 issue of The Spark, Business and Innovation magazine, you'll recognize today's speaker as she was featured in The Hustle, a section dedicated to impressive entrepreneurs and industry leaders. If you haven't seen the fall issue yet, be sure to visit sparkmagazine.ca to download a digital copy and subscribe to receive future issues. The media kit is also available on our website, and if you're interested in advertising within the Spark magazine. So today's guest, Sarah Sedgman, is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so excited to chat with her today. Prior to founding LearnExperts, Sarah held a number of executive positions at technology companies such as Cognos, IBM, PTC, and Kinaxis, and lead large multi-million-dollar learning businesses. She's known as a thought leader in the learning industry and holds board positions on prominent associations such as Customer Education Management Association and Technology Services Industry Association. She speaks at many events and has won several industry awards for innovations in learning and learning products. She's also an executive advisor for the Scale Up program at Invest Ottawa. So now I'd like to welcome Sarah to join me on stage.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hope you're having a great day. And we're looking forward to how you can help share some information with all the people on our Startup Grind today. Share some of the experiences, some of the benefits, some of the challenges that you have found as you've gone through your entrepreneurial journey. So maybe let me just kick off. Did you always have an entrepreneurial streak, or is this something that came later in life like it happened for me?
I always had an entrepreneurial streak. It goes way back in my family, for sure. My grandfathers, one of them helped to start a company called Harvester International in Chatham, Ontario, where he was the president. And my papa, he manually produced the Canadiana Encyclopedia in his basement and worked at Grolier Publishing as well. So it started with them. I watched my brother do a startup called Fix Software. He co-founded that and they sold that company. My mom paints her own paintings and sells them. And I early on was a musician. So I wrote a lot of songs. And as I traveled into my 20s, started a music business. So it was always there. But then when I looked forward to my career, I thought I better buckle down and work at a corporate company and get a regular job to make my way through. But certainly as I worked, my first job was at Cognos, which was based here in Ottawa. I quickly made my way into the education space because it was a passion of mine. And we innovated throughout. So we were always, I was always encouraging the team to try new things, to build innovative products. That's where we won a lot of our industry awards. So certainly that builder mentality and innovation has been there throughout my whole career.
Wow. Well, I can see that certainly all those, super influencers and super excellers in your family helped shape who you are today. So that was, obviously great. Tell us a little bit of a breakdown of your career before LearnExperts. I know you were with Cognos, but what were some of the roles that you played? Give us a sense for the kind of, professional skills you developed and the experiences you had in the workforce when you were, prior to starting LearnExperts.
Yeah, I started my career as a tech writer. I thought actually I was going to be a teacher. And then at the time, there was a lot of people graduating and going into technology companies. So I thought, well, I can do tech writing. So I moved into tech writing and building courses and education material at Cognos to teach customers how to use the products. And then over time, I had a huge interest in the business side. So we actually sold the training to customers, and it was a large $45 million training business. So I made my way over to the business side. And then throughout that time, there was a lot of new things happening in the education world where we weren't just delivering instructor-led training anymore. We were delivering e-learning, and there was all these new technologies, which was fascinating to me. So I moved into the business side and really drove some of that. We were acquired by IBM and had the fortune to sit on a group of 11 education executives across IBM, which was super interesting to learn how to navigate a large size company and then work with such smart people across the business. And then followed a dream of mine to work for a company called PTC, which was based in Boston, running their large global training business. That was an $80 million training business. It was very global, a lot of manufacturing companies. And we actually sold e-learning as SaaS. So that was super early to sell products as subscription based. But we figured out how to do that. And the company really liked that revenue stream, high profit subscription SaaS revenue. And then was recruited back here to Ottawa to a company called Kinaxis, which at the time, not a lot of people had heard of Kinaxis. Now a lot of people know Kinaxis, quite successful. And I went in as the chief knowledge officer. We took the training business from $250K to $3 million in 2 years. And then I became the chief customer officer. So I also brought in the customer success, experience side, renewals, all along the way, bringing teams of people. A lot of people followed me from company to company, and we did some really exciting things. And for me, learning the business side and the executive side was really interesting. But my motivation always was, how can I bring a great group of people together, a team of people, and do some really exciting things. So that was always exciting for me. And through my whole career, weaved through, I'm very passionate about training, education, learning, but I lived a problem through my whole career around the slow manual side of developing content. And I looked for solutions through my whole career, and I kept thinking, I can build this. Of course, tying back to my entrepreneurial spirit, I thought I could build this and solve a problem for so many people in the industry that are struggling with the same thing I am. And that's why eventually in 2019, I decided to take a massive leap of faith, leave the comfy corporate world that I had established and start my own company. That's where
wow, that's a great story. And, it's always interesting for people to have a sense for the things you went through in your career. Like, you were looking at it saying, okay, I'm a tech writer. And now look at where you are today. So let me ask you this. Was the pain point to drive the business idea that content aspect? Is that what really drove the business ideas? Like there's always something that drives the business idea that says, okay, I can start this business. I can build this business. So give us a little context around that. What was really driving it?
Yeah, I will say my story goes back to when I was at Cognos. The CEO called me one day and said, we're acquiring customers fast, releasing new features fast. At that time, I was running the curriculum, our course development team. He said the courses are coming out 6 to 9 months after product release. The reason for that was just because it was a slow manual process. Every time the product changed, we had to do updates. So we waited until it was, a good time to write the courses. But it was impacting the customers' adoption, the ability for us to get the internal staff trained to support the customers. He said, I really need help to solve the problem. So the first thing I did was go and look for software to see if we could, accelerate what we were doing, which no software existed at the time. So as I continued on in my career, we solved the problem. We did release training at time of product release, but it was still really slow. And through my whole career, I kept looking for solutions to solve the problem, because every time, even when I moved from company to company, the training team still didn't have the tools to be able to accelerate. It was very people-based and, word processing tools. So, we often talked about ways to accelerate, what learning technologies could be built. But we just didn't see anyone building these things. And so eventually, when the timing was good for me, where I felt comfortable taking a big risk, I felt motivated to see if we could solve it in a different way. And especially as AI, natural language processing, different technologies have come about, that's where, for me, it got really interesting, because I thought, like, if we could start to recognize patterns in content, we can get the system to do things that our brain logic does in the system itself. So that was really the driving motivation, was how can I solve this problem for all the people that are living it like me, and really disrupt the industry there.
That's a great story. Now, obviously from a entrepreneur standpoint, funding the business is always a big thing. So you originally were planning to bootstrap the company, but over time you had to adjust kind of your position and figure out how to raise capital to support the business. So what advice would you have for other founders that might be in a similar type situation?
Yeah, I think when I started the business, I felt, okay, I've run businesses before. I've built them from scratch. I can do this myself. And I think immediately I felt I can be self-sufficient. I don't need help. Maybe that was right, and maybe it was wrong. There are lots of successful startups that start themselves and get themselves to a Series A. But eventually they need funding. And so I think eventually I realized we could keep bootstrapping. We did a lot of bootstrapping through expert services that we were able to do because people knew us in the industry. But when we built a prototype of the product and we started to show people who we knew the product, they got super excited and they said, if it works, if the prototype even works, we would pay to use that. And we'd be happy to sign up for an early adopter program to help. And that's where I thought that, in combination with the pandemic, was really fueling a lot of education technology purchases. Those companies were growing, more so on the delivery to the learner. So I knew that there was still then, or even more so than the need to help companies develop the content to get it into these delivery technologies. So those two combined, I thought maybe I should rethink this bootstrap idea and go raise money. And so I hadn't done that before. There's a lot of new things, even being an executive at a huge corporate companies, jumping into the entrepreneur world, whole different set of things to learn and master and get good at. And so I didn't even know what was ahead. I just said, I think we need to fundraise so that we can accelerate, hire people in-house, and get going alongside this education or learning technology upswing. The first thing I did was reach out to a number of advisors I had met over the last year and a half previous. And I said, okay, I'm going to fundraise. Now what do I do? So the first thing they had me do was start getting introduced to some of the angel groups. And then, of course, I learned and I practiced. I put my pitch deck together and practiced it, probably 100 times with 100 different people. And then I was ready to pitch the angel groups, and the angel groups, they all network together. And so I kept getting invited to different angel network presentations, and it went from there.
Wow, that's great. It is very tough raising money. I mean, I can remember doing it in my own career as well. And it is a tough thing to do. But, you made a very key point. You got your slide deck together and you practice it, because if you don't have a good slide deck and a good pitch, nobody's going to be investing in you, because you have to, as you said, you got to spark that idea. So let me ask you this. From what you were looking at originally in your product, like, here's my idea, this is what I'm going to build the business around, to what it is today, has much changed in terms of the actual product, or is it pretty much exactly what you originally intended?
It's pretty similar, I would say. I think I'm one that will always ask for advice. So, that's one thing I would say, even in the pitch deck conversations. I don't know if everyone on the call knows what an ITA at IRAP is, but, the government funding system to fund technology. The very first pitch I practiced was with my ITA, and now today we laugh over how bad it was. So, really asking for advice and being open to the feedback that you're getting. Don't get defensive, just listen to what people have to offer. I was able to tweak and tweak and tweak. So then as I'm going forward, I think starting in 2019, again, I had developed education products, and learning products, but that's different, very different than developing a software product. So the first thing we did as we were starting to bootstrap, was we had all these ideas about how we could build the product, but we wanted to get advice from people who had done it throughout, our network and our career. So we actually did mock-ups in PowerPoint, which sounds hokey, but it did the trick of how we were thinking we would have the user experience for the product and how it would work. And then we brought in, I think, 25, 30 really smart people who had done product development and management. And that helped us really redefine the design. So the feedback I had gotten from a lot of people was, don't have anyone start coding the product until you're really sure about the design, especially if you are working with consultants, which was what we had to do to start. We had to hire a consulting firm. And so we spent about 9 months actually refining those prototypes, or the things that we built in PowerPoint. And that helped us, once we started to code, really build what we had envisioned. That made us really efficient. And I would say through that feedback process, we actually flipped a few things, and made the product really easy to use versus a longer way to get into the product, just based on that feedback alone. And that's one of the value drivers of our product today.
Yeah. You bring up some very good points, is that you have to leverage the people and other skills out in the industry to help you better define it. Sometimes you get locked in with those blinders. This is a great product. It's the next best thing. But then all of a sudden you start getting feedback from other people that say, hey, well, this could be a little bit, you could tweak this, you could do that, you could do this. So I think you bring up some great points. So let me ask you this. Given where you're at today, would you have done anything differently?
I thought about that a little bit. I think the things I would have done differently, there's a lot of things I would not change actually, because we really thought through. We're good as a team. Even starting, there was 3 to 5 of us, a small team, but we really thought about and discussed and collaborated on things going forward. I think I would have changed my thought process around how I was going to start the business. I thought I knew what I was doing because I had a lot of experience running businesses, experience, bringing teams together, managing teams. But starting a company is a lot different than jumping into a company that's already established. And I think I'm adjusting already, but I think what I would have changed at the beginning was not having such a hard approach to this is what I'm going to do and it's going to work. Because what I've learned over the last 3.5 years is you may have a perfect plan forward, but often in the entrepreneur space and starting a company, it's not going to work perfectly like that. It's actually going to be zigzaggy and all over the place, and eventually you get to where you need to get. And so I've learned flexibility. I've learned to adjust really fast. I've learned to listen to customers, even prospects. We do a lot of demoing and prospect meetings, to say, even with the product, to say, okay, maybe we didn't quite get these pieces right. Maybe we should adjust and build that feedback into what we're going to do in the roadmap. And certainly around the fundraise, I look back now and I think I was headstrong. I was going to bootstrap and be self-sufficient. I didn't need to rely on anyone. But I learned how beneficial it was to fundraise and have all of those investors at the table with you, supporting you and giving you advice. How much that fundraise can accelerate beyond how quickly you can go bootstrapping. So I made a promise to myself when we finished the fundraise that, I would learn from others and adjust my thinking and follow the process, kind of the proven process to build a great company.
Yeah, that's great. Now, you talked about some of the challenges. What were some of the biggest roadblocks that you ran into?
There's roadblocks all the way, I would say. Sometimes I say to myself, being successful building a company is based on how much grit you have to just keep moving those roadblocks out of the way, and how creative you can get about doing that. There was definitely probably the biggest roadblock to start was the pandemic. So, that definitely hit my bootstrap plan too, because we had expert services, but of course the pandemic hit. And then all of a sudden companies were holding back funding and they weren't sure what was going to happen. And so they weren't spending money on services-based engagements. And so right away we had to revamp and say, okay, how are we going to get funding to keep going? And luckily the government, had a lot of great programs that helped us really focus on the product. I knew from my past, in times of a downturn or times of risk where companies start holding back, I knew focus on assets. I've learned that. And so we shifted our focus to building out the product. And that's what helped us get to the prototype faster, which helped us get to the fundraise. So I think, even with that massive roadblock, because we were flexible and focused on the right things, focus is really important. It actually benefited us. I think if we had bootstrapped longer, we wouldn't have gotten as far as quick. And so being able to navigate that. And then, I say to my team often, building a business from scratch or building a company, building software products, there's all these unnatural things that have to come together to actually succeed. So you need funding, you need, good people, you need the right ideas, you need a product market fit, but to find product market fit and to find funding and to find good people, you need time, but you don't have time. So you kind of have to plow through and try and make the right decisions, and then, take a few steps back and refocus and keep going. And then, of course, in the fundraising journey, investors are looking for traction, and they're looking for hints of this is going to be a success. And again, you need time to build all of those things. I would say, every time I think, okay, we're on the right track and we've solved all the problems and now we can focus on just executing forward, of course, another problem will present itself, and then we have to focus on that. And my team and I, we found this funny post on LinkedIn one day, posted in an entrepreneur group about the trough of sorrow and how the journey of a new company, you're kind of going along and then you hit the trough of sorrow and then you try to climb yourself out. And so we just have this ongoing joke to keep things light and laugh. Is like, are we back in the trough of sorrow today? And how are we going to climb out? And so I think there was probably a number of roadblocks along the way, but really getting creative about how to solve those and staying positive is important.
Interesting. Now, you've mentioned more than once in our discussion already about highly talented people, smart people, great people that you've worked with, experts who followed you along through the business. And you've said before, you only hire superstars. So how do people stand out to you as superstars? What makes those people superstars in your eyes? What qualities do you look for?
Yeah, I look for, so I learned, I ran teams. I've been, managing teams probably for 17, 18 years. So I made mistakes along the way for sure on hiring and who to work with. But I learned if you can find people who are willing to push forward no matter what, they're focused, they like to achieve, and they collaborate and work together. Those are definitely qualities. High trust. Those are all qualities that I look for in people that I hire. Often I'm reaching back into my network of people I've worked with because I'm like, I've kind of helped build and establish some superstars along the way. But certainly starting a company, there's all sorts of different roles that I need to bring into like sales, like marketing, that are different. So I'll often look for people that are open, collaborative, they work hard, like to execute, achieve, focus, and mixed with sort of those soft skills, collaborative, trusting, respectful. And when you bring all of those pieces together, it really creates a winning team. And I won't, as of today, now that I've been doing it for so long, I won't compromise. So if I'm hiring and I can't find the right fit, I'll wait. I'll rely on the team. We'll pull together and keep doing that function until we can find someone who's really great. And actually, I can see one of my superstars is on the call, Kevin. So he's one that I worked with long back at Canaxis, but he's an example of one.
That's great. It's no different than, whether you're building a house or whether you're building a tree fort. If you are using inferior products, you're not going to get a quality product at the end, and it's not going to last long. Whereas if you get high quality people with the right skill sets, you're going to build a great company and it's going to last a lot longer. So that's a great thing for people to understand. Now, let me switch gears a little bit. You're a female founder in a space traditionally dominated by men. So a couple questions. One is, what do you see changing? And do you think that whole space is changing? And what message would you give to other female founders?
Yeah, I think it is changing. Even from when I started jumping into this in 2019, I joined a pre-accelerator program at Invest Ottawa. They at Invest Ottawa that year, they had really focused on bringing some women entrepreneurs in. So I think there was 7 of us out of a group of 30, maybe. But since then, there's been so many fantastic programs focused around supporting women entrepreneurs. There's female founder funds that have been established. BDC just announced a huge $500 million fund for women founders. There's a fabulous program here based in Ottawa, but it's national, called SheBoot. So I'm starting to see all of these support systems to support women entrepreneurs. And certainly in my own network, there's quite a few of us that are pushing through. So I think this is changing the game. I think the stats are female founders are successful at getting 3% of the overall funding available. And I definitely see that changing. And I just saw, I think it was through LinkedIn, NACO posted a new publication that featured 27 women founders and supporters, investors that are helping to change the landscape. And I myself, actually, even in my fundraise, I was successful at getting 6 female investors. So I think, like anything where there's maybe a minority, or a group of people that are less successful, I think just normalizing it, like showing the women founders, showing the success, getting women investors, supporting women. There's lots of male investors also that supported me. And actually the lead investor that we found through Maple Leaf Angels, that those are all males that have really supported me and our company. So I think it will change. Just like anything, it takes time to do that, but there is certainly a lot of focus on why female founders are successful, and why we deserve a seat at the table. My own mindset on that, because I worked in executive roles at corporate companies where it was also very male dominated. I tried not to think too much about it. I think if I focused on that, I would go to a place that wasn't good. I just focused on the fact that I had the same value to bring to the table. And I proved my value over and over. And I didn't really think about, do I have to prove my value more than a male? I didn't think about it. I just showed what I could do. And I was vocal about the things that I could contribute and how I could help the company innovate and grow. And I think it's the exact same in the founder world. I think the females that are making it through, we're just saying, okay, we have a great idea, just like anybody else, and we can push through and do this too.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you. And that's great advice for our audience. Actually, we've got a question come in from Karen Chase, who's in the audience today. And she wants to know if, Sarah, you could elaborate on the types of non-dilutive funding programs that you may have tapped in to help grow your businesses.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because I talked a bit about the fundraise, but I actually layered in different non-dilutive funds too. So early on, Invest Ottawa has been fantastic for me, and I know in the Toronto area there's Communitech and Mars, and then this platform, Startup Grind. It's really great for connecting to the right people. So early on at Invest Ottawa, I was connected to an ITA through IRAP, and was able to put a really good business case forward and get early IRAP funding. So government funding, grant funding, there's all sorts of different funds now to help drive entrepreneurs and founders or new companies forward. Even through the pandemic, we were wondering if some of that government funding would dry up, but it didn't. It actually exceeded because the government recognized that it was really important to drive innovation. There's funding now around IP strategies, because Canada is definitely recognizing that it's important to stamp our own IP and keep IP in Canada. So it's sometimes hard to navigate the government funding, but if you can find the right people or the right systems, like Invest.o is great to help navigate that, you can find good funding there. I was also able to get a BDC loan. And even though it was scary for me to sign up for a loan early on with our business, thinking, oh my goodness, somehow we have to pay this back, I still took a risk and got approved for that. And I thought, at least this will help me sleep at night. And eventually we're going to drive forward and be successful, and we'll be able to repay this loan. So those were two really great sources of funding for us that launched us. And then of course we also were able to do some expert services revenue. So we're not focused on that going forward. We think we'll still have some expert services that people will ask for. But it certainly was a great way for us to get started and really dive into the problem, the pain points that, our current customers, some of them now have transitioned to the product, the pain points that the industry had to solve.
Great. Well, listen, thanks, Karen, for that question. We appreciate that. And if there's anybody else in the audience who has a question they want to ask Sarah, by all means, just put it into your chat and just ask the question. Sarah's more than happy to answer any of them. So let me ask you this, because you've talked about meeting people and building your network and contacts and everything. I recall in an article in Forbes, you stressed the importance of not being afraid to ask for help. And you've mentioned that a number of times today, and to build your network. So for all those entrepreneurs out there, do you have any networking tips or tricks that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, the tips, I think number one, seek out people to get advice from. People who've done this before, people who've done aspects of the business before. I actively went and asked people if they would give me advice on topics. And then I would prepare. I would schedule the meetings, but I would prepare for the meetings. And I would really think about what is it that I want to ask them during this half hour or hour of time that they're willing to give me. I asked people about products. I asked them about marketing. I asked my IT. Continue to ask my IT at IRAP all sorts of questions. And the other thing is, I often will ask the people who have helped me or given me advice if they know someone else who could do that. So certainly, I talked about the pitch prep and the pitch deck. But as I navigated that, every time I finished a pitch, I would really listen to the feedback. I would make notes, and I would send them a note back to tell them how I incorporated their feedback, the things I chose to do and not do. And I would ask, is there anyone else you can think of that could provide feedback to me? And so then they would introduce me to someone else in their network, and then so on. So those are some tips, both for getting feedback, but also for growing your network. For me, it comes naturally to network. I love networking, which is good, but it doesn't come naturally to everyone. So if you show respect to those willing to give you advice and ask them if they can introduce you to the next person. One thing I learned early on in my career is if you ask someone for advice, very, very rarely will they say no. I don't think I've ever had someone say no. And through navigating my whole career, not just this entrepreneur journey, I asked people for advice all along the way. Sometimes it was, how do I, deal with the situation, or how do I manage people better, or how do I get the team to be, top performing, or how do I move from a director to a VP? But I've always built that into my career, and I learned the more advice you can get from people who know and have done it, the faster you can go. And so I never try to reinvent the wheel. Instead, I go back to those who have done it, and I just follow what they say.
I'm a big proponent of networking. I invest a lot of time in networking. I recommend it to everybody who's either growing a business, whether it's a startup or not. Networking is unbelievable. You just never know the people that you will meet who can help you in business, personal life, whatever the case may be. And generally, everybody has a sense for, wanting to help. And what I like about what you said is you actually gave people feedback to tell them how you use their advice, which I think for me, that's a gem, because people don't typically do that. So good for you on doing that. We've got another question coming in from the audience from Daili. How has the pandemic changed the way of forming a startup in Canada from your point of view, Sarah?
I don't know if it's necessarily changed the fundamentals of building a company. I think those are the same. But I think what it's done is it's definitely added a different challenge. And so I'm finding that entrepreneurs and founders need to get creative around navigating those challenges where maybe they didn't have to navigate those things before. So, the pandemic, of course, lucky for us, we were already working from home because a lot of the people, we had a small team, but we had all come from working at corporate companies where we were comfortable working from home. But I know for a lot of companies, they had to adjust, if they had office space or they were used to working as a team, all of a sudden they had to adjust to a remote working environment, which was different. On the flip side, I think that's brought a lot of positives, and the buying habits of customers changed. So where companies thought, okay, I have product market fit, or I have this line of sight, or I've partnered with a company, that undid itself really fast, and companies had to spin and pivot. And, I've seen some companies change their whole product and platform just throughout the pandemic because, one company, for example, I knew they had a application to deliver office snacks. Well, people weren't in the office anymore, so they had to pivot. So they used the framework of the platform and pivoted to something completely different. And now they're on their way doing that. So I think companies had to be willing to not give up, maybe change what they thought they were going to do to something else. And find out like buying companies or buyers have changed. The things that mattered to them a couple of years ago before the pandemic maybe are completely different now. And so the challenge for startups and early stage companies was, okay, do we still have the right market fit? Do we still have the right marketing approach, the right sales approach to fit into this new world? And I would say, now things are kind of coming back to normal. But they're still different. And so it's still kind of a hybrid approach that we're all learning through and pushing through. I see there's a couple other questions, so I'll pause there on that.
Yeah, looks like one of our own from the Spark Center, Melanie Marler. She wants to know if you could share your take on the importance of branding and marketing for early stage startup companies.
Yeah, so we definitely have been working through that exact thing. When I started the company in 2019, I thought, okay, we just need a website. We need a presence. We need, to be established. But of course, back then we didn't have the funds to hire experienced people to do branding and marketing. So we just made it up. And it made do. But eventually we needed to have a more professional look and feel. So about a year and a half in, probably just after we did the fundraise last year, we did a refresh, and we had contracted someone to help us with a bit of branding and marketing and messaging. And that helped us get a little bit farther. And then this week we actually launched a whole new website, where we were able to really refine our logo and some of our colors. So we're taking the next phase step. And so I think branding and marketing is important, but it can be expensive. And I think early on, people are willing to put up with things that are okay, but not, like I was just on the apple.com website last night thinking, holy cow, this is amazing. So I think people are okay with the journey you're going through. But at some point, and now we've commercialized the product and we really want to push forward on customer acquisition, now we have to look like we're an established company and we look professional. So it was important to put a bit more effort and dollars there. And going forward, as we want to drive our customer acquisition, now we need to think about, okay, how do we get inbound leads and how do we drive forward with the right messaging so it's really easy for people to know what we're doing. And so now finally we're putting some funding behind that.
Yeah. So we're kind of closing in on kind of the end of our talk session here, Sarah, but let me ask you this. What's next for you and LearnExperts?
Next for us, so we're back in the fundraising stream. So right now I'm looking for a lead investor. We're making some progress there. And then as I talked through the networking and working with my current investors and getting a lot of advice and feedback from them, I'm keeping them up to date on the fundraising, and they're saying we're happy to do follow-on. So that kind of comes back around in really managing and taking care of your network and communicating well. With that funding, then we're really focused on customer acquisition. So I just hired a VP of sales, a woman who came highly recommended, superstar. And then she's going to help me hire a sales team. And we're going to put funding towards that marketing I just talked about, and really digging in with our customers, doing a lot of discovery work with our customers and prospects around, really what are their pain points and what would they pay to solve. And that's going to help us focus. And that's going to start driving us towards the metrics we need to get to a Series A, probably, we're hoping maybe 2024. Wow,
that sounds exciting. So just as we're getting close to wrapping up, are there any final thoughts that maybe you want to leave with our entrepreneurial community that's with us today?
Yeah, I would say don't give up if you're an entrepreneur founder. Like I said, before I even started the company, I met with a whole bunch of people and said, I'm thinking of starting a company. What advice would you give me? And they kept saying, just start. You don't have to have the best plan in the world. Just start. If you have ideas, start. So start, but don't give up. There are definitely days. I'm a person who will not give up. And there are days where I'm thinking, what have I done? What have I got myself into? I could easily have an executive job at a corporate company. But those are the days I tell myself that I believe, we have a great idea and we're going to be successful, and I have the right people around me to do that. So just keep going. And that's the advice I think I would leave.
Yeah, that stick-to-itiveness is very, very important, and perseverance, because, you talk about roadblocks, and, some people like to term them as speed bumps along the way, because you will continue to move. It just, sometimes you're just not moving at that same pace that you think you should be, right? Yeah. And that makes it tough for a lot of people. Yeah. I'm sure you've experienced that too.
Yes. My poor team, I'm always like, but can't we do it faster? They're like, this just takes time, Sarah. Yeah. So, I've learned the art of patience too. There's just some things that take time. But yeah, just keep pushing through. If you keep going, it'll happen.
That's great. Well, I must say, Sarah, I've truly enjoyed speaking with you today in our discussion. I think you've given some phenomenal gems out to our audience today. Some great ideas and things that they can think about, figure out how to integrate into their day-to-day thought process about building their business, or if they are in the process of building a business, how they can leverage some of the learnings that you have shared with them. So I want to thank you very much for that. And I also want to wish you the best of success with LearnExperts and your fundraising.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to chat today.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And we'll be looking to keep seeing you out in the marketplace. So that was great. I really enjoyed that. And I I hear Sarah talking, and I think about my own experience in startups, and I go, yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah, I remember doing that. Anyway, it's really interesting. So this startup grind was proudly presented by Spark Center, and we want to say thank you again to Spark Center's elite partners, Breskin and Parr LLP, Finance Without Borders, RDP Associates, Leighton, and Suresh Law. So the next startup grind is taking place on Thursday, October 27th, and is sponsored by the Durham Regional Technology Development Site. If you're a startup or SME with innovation in electric and connected vehicles, smart mobility and smart community solutions, this is an event that you will not want to miss. So mark your calendar and keep an eye on Spark Center social pages for more details and to register. So now it's time for networking. So if you wish to join us, you can navigate to the section by clicking on the people icon on the left side of your screen. You'll be paired up with one person at a time for 3 minutes. And you can use this time to get to know each other, and you'll have an option to extend the session if desired. Once the time is up, press ready, and Hopin will automatically move you on to the next person. Click the connect button if you'd like to exchange contact information with anyone on there. So it's, I've actually done this before. I can remember going in and we were doing, it was fundraising, and they did it like speed dating. And you'd go in and you'd go to one desk and you'd talk to people for 10 minutes, and then move on to the next desk and talk to people for 10 minutes. And it's surprising. A lot of that ends up being successful. So again, Gary Jarosz, I'm the chair of the board of Spark Center. I want to thank everybody for attending today. Thanks to Sarah Sedgman again for her interesting conversation and her points of interest for us.